Welcome to Edwards Beyond the Test, a podcast that goes behind the scenes of the flight test mission at Edwards Air Force Base. I'm Dawn Waldman from the 412 Test Wing Public Affairs. More than likely, we've all heard or used the phrase human factor in conversation. I personally use it when I speak of fatigue. Well, here at Edwards, there is a small group of human factors engineers who are part of the Human Systems Integration Flight who always think of the human factors in association with flight test. Today, we'll talk with one of the human factors engineers who currently works on the legacy F-16 aircraft. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. DiCarie Williamson. He's from the 773rd Test Squadron. DiCarie, I really appreciate that you're here with us today.
I'm glad to be here. It's definitely a blessing and definitely a highlight in my career thus far.
Well, thank you. You know, over the years, I've had an opportunity to talk with many different types of engineers, but I have to say you are the first human factors engineer that I've ever had the opportunity to talk with. So do you mind telling us what a human factors engineer is in relationship to flight test?
Yeah, absolutely. So we center ourselves obviously on the human system. So the human system is very complex, and we look at how the user, how the human kind of works in relation to flight tests in the aircraft, right? So we're looking at the aviation systems. We're looking at how usable the systems are. We'll look at the pilot's workload. If the systems are contributing or taking away from the user's situational awareness. There's such a wide array of things that a human factors engineer can do. Obviously, we have various different platforms of aircraft that we field and test here at Edwards. So we can go as deep as ergonomics. We can look at, system usability. There's just a plethora of different things that we do as human factors engineers, and it really comes down to, how we're upgrading the flight systems, what technology we're implementing, and it's a lot of stuff, and it's a fun time specifically for human factors engineers, given the current landscape and where we're going with our technology.
Well, you're assigned over to the 773rd Test Squadron, but you're currently matrixed at the 416th Flight Test Squadron. What kind of work are you doing over there?
At the 416th, we specialize in the F-16. We also do work on the T-38 and now the new T-7 aircraft. Obviously, T-7 is brand new, so we have human factors engineers, kind of testing alongside of Boeing and doing tremendous work over there. From time to time, we'll look at different flight systems within the T-38, but what I primarily focus my study and tests are with the foreign military sales on the F-16. So our allied nations, they purchase F-16s from us, and they're constantly updating their systems. So we're testing new OFPs. We're looking at new weapons and things like that pretty much empowers the warfighter, whether it's U.S. forces or our allied nations. So that's what we do, and that's what I specifically do here at the 416.
Well, DiCarie, you mentioned the T-7, brand new untested aircraft. Well, somewhat untested, if you know what I mean. But we're doing the developmental test evaluation for that. But and I see why a human factors engineer would be needed really on that. But tell us, why so much on a legacy aircraft like the F-16?
Well, just like our cars, we have to keep up with the times. We have new technology that'll help the user, operate motor vehicles safely. So kind of the same thing, kind of the same flavor when we look at aircraft. So with our F-16, we have different flight instruments, avionic systems that assist the user in being able to employ weapons or find where they are in relation to where they are in the world, global positioning, all of these different things. So as the technology improves, we are making sure that we can implement all of the new things and taking out some of the old. But in taking out some of the old flight systems, we got to make sure that we didn't disrupt any of the other working systems within the aircraft. So it's a constant cycle of testing the new, ensuring all the old is still working and is still able to get the aircraft, or shoot, move, and communicate the aircraft. So it's definitely a lot, and I think that's one of the biggest tasks are the checks and balances with adding and testing different systems.
Well, DiCarie, you mentioned you're working in foreign military sales. Why is this flight test program taking place at Edwards?
Foreign military sales is kind of a big program for us because, as mentioned before, when we talk about the warfighter, we want to make sure our allies are just as equipped and their readiness is just as important as our own. When they are upgrading their aircraft, we have some of the best test pilots to ensure aircraft's readiness, and we're able to report back to the end user to say, yes, this is a good system, or these are some of the things that you should know, these are significant, or, this is something that changed, so you might want to adjust your training to, how these new systems work.
Well, DiCarie, throughout your engineering career, you've had some opportunities that are just incredible to participate in programs and have small stakes and programs like the Auto GCAS. Tell us about that.
One thing I love about the 416th is, yes, we do big programs like the Auto GCAS, and for me, it was just like a blessing to have even a small role in it. But what's humbling for me is being able to sit with the flight sciences team as these guys are writing the codes for Auto GCAS, and I had the opportunity to look at like some mechanization for button placement for the pilot. So it allowed me to take up a little bit of stake in this big Auto GCAS program. And like I don't I hate bringing it up with these guys because I got to try and act cool whenever I'm around them, but I'm absolutely like amazed at some of the work that these guys do at Flight Sciences, and with the F-35 and the F-16 receiving the Collier Trophy, it really put its stamp in time, and it really validated where I am in my career. One of my like very proud moments thus far with the 416th is not only being able to see how this type of technology saves people, but even to kind of take up some space in it. So that was huge for me.
That is huge, and congratulations. And for those who don't know it, Auto GCAS is the Automated Ground Collision Avoidance System. So you really like the F-16 aircraft. Would you say that's your favorite jet?
It is definitely my favorite aircraft.
Why do you like the older aircraft?
It's just something about a classic vehicle that, for me, it's just comparative to the old Chevelle, the old Porsche Carreras. If you take something old and you just implement the new, it's just like if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like 5th gen is cool and all, but like it's just something about the F-16s and that just think is just like kind of the coolest thing. Single engine bird, kind of different variations, multi-role. I just absolutely love the look. It's a go-kart. The Viper. I absolutely love the Viper.
DiCarie, you recently told me that this was your dream job, but getting here wasn't an easy road. We'll talk about that journey in just a moment. Welcome back to Edwards Beyond the Test. Our guest today is Mr. DiCarie Williamson, who is a human factors engineer with the 773rd Test Squadron here at Edwards. So, DiCarie, is it true that when you were a young man, your dream was to become a pilot? What did you do early on to pursue that dream?
My dream was to definitely become a pilot, but I knew, it was going to be a lot of work. I was the son of a Navy guy, so the military was always something in the I wouldn't say in the cards. Like I know I wanted to go to college, but I guess to get closer to my goal, I said, you know what, Dad, I really love airplanes, and as long as I'm working on aircraft, I think I'll be happy, and I could kind of chip away at what my goal is, to eventually become a pilot. My dad was a Navy guy, so I said, yeah, Dad, I'm gonna go into the Navy. And he said, look, son, you're way smarter than me. I'm gonna introduce you to the Air Force, and that's what he did. We looked at different opportunities, and I think the best bet for me at the time was looking at the Air Force. So I told the recruiter, I don't care whatever it is that I do in the Air Force, as long as it's working on jets, I'm going to be good to go, and I'll commit to that.
So you joined the Air Force, and what was your career field then?
So I was a 2W1 aircraft armament systems technician, weapons troop. So we were responsible with loading bombs, missiles, gun system, everything that relates to the guns or the weapons system was my job. And I was actually tasked and shredded out to the F-15. So I started my career as a F-15 troop. And after I obtained my 5-level transition to kind of open weapon systems, I worked on the flight line. I worked in the back shop and worked on various different platforms in the back shop, but eventually made my way to the Viper, and it's been F-16s ever since.
Well, you weren't in for very long before 2005 rolled around. There was a reduction in force at that time in the Air Force. That caused you to have to take up some different opportunities. Do you want to share that with us?
Absolutely, yes. So, yeah, I was a 4-year enlistee, and it was at the height, at least for me, the height of force shaping. So I had a couple of opportunities. I was working here at Edwards, and when I went in to talk to my career counselor about the different options, HPO was kind of a big topic. It was a hot topic at the time because we wanted to make Edwards Air Force Base a high performing organization, and pretty much fill the spots with the civilian workforce. So they said, you know what? You can re-enlist, but this is also something that you may consider, which is, applying to become a civil servant. So I looked at that, I weighed my options, and I was like, wow, this is kind of a tremendous opportunity. So I kind of went that route, and it took a little bit of time to process, but eventually I did. I got hired on as a weapons technician, but we were also cross-utilized to do crew chief duties. So again, assigned to the 412th Aircraft Maintenance Squadron. At the time, we were Shadow, and I worked F-16s here at Shadow, and it was great. It was a fantastic time. Learned a lot about the machine. At that point, I actually transitioned my entire career to aircraft, power plant, and ground. Kind of stepped away from the weapon systems to kind of give myself a little bit more versatility within the workforce.
So while that was going on, the Army Reserves came up. What was happening there?
In transitioning from the Air Force. Now, if you asked me when I was a young man and when I was enlisted into the Air Force, I would have told you I was a 20-year guy. I felt like I separated a little prematurely, and for whatever reason, although I was working on and wrenching on aircraft, I had like this overwhelming feeling that I had left something on the table. What I left on the table was my commitment to trying to become an aviator, becoming a pilot. So I said, okay, I will never forgive myself if I get to become an old man and I have to have a conversation with my grandkids and talk about, what I did or didn't do in my career. So I kind of reverse engineered that and said, okay, I have one shot, one opportunity to try and make this thing happen. So I went back to college, finished my undergrad, and I pursued the Air Force Reserve and the Air National Guard to try and get a flight position, which is a very, very, if anyone knows, it's a very competitive process. So ultimately, it didn't manifest with the Air Force, but once I hit the age limit, because they were very strict about the age limit at the time, I thought all the doors were closed. That is until I looked at opportunities with other branches, and that kind of landed me in the Army's, recruiting station. And they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I really want to be a pilot. And they said, oh, well, what makes you think you could be a pilot? And I said, I have 12 years of aircraft experience. I work weapon systems. I work this. And they were like, oh, you should definitely be a pilot, right? And so they got me in touch with their commander. And their commander at the time, Captain Josh Dawson, really good guy. He said, this is what I do, and I actually took this different route. I started my career as a guardsman. He kind of gave me this roadmap and says, the Army has all of these different programs to kind of put you through. In his career, he became a AH-64 Apache pilot, and I was just like, yeah, I would love that. I love everything weapons. I love, targeting systems and stuff like that. So he gave me this blueprint, and I went with the Army and took this blueprint with me and went through, ROTC and eventually became commissioned as an aviation officer in 2016. So that was like step one, getting through. Yeah, it just never really manifested the way that I wanted it to. But I found all of these other opportunities along the way, which is, being a human factors engineer.
And that's pretty exciting to me. I think, you had a great growth period. You hit Edwards doing an awesome job for the warfighter in probably one of the most unique places I know it is the most unique place in the planet to do this kind of work.
Absolutely. It is great, but, it never really manifested because, I had to pivot. Just different things in life kind of happened, and I, again, had to say, well, what was really important? Well, in the same time, I had no idea, but, my civilian career kind of manifested, and, somebody found me and said, hey, wow, we have we heard you're a human factors guy. And I said, yeah, absolutely. We heard you, you studied this in your master's program. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And they said, well, we have a human factors flight. And I said, well, seriously? We have that here at Edwards? And that's kind of around the same time when things didn't happen one way. Things started to kind of take hold, and all these little small pieces started to fall in place in a different direction. And so, I was like, wow, I'm a human factors engineer now? I had no idea that this is even a thing.
DiCarie, you're the type of person who takes full responsibility of your own destiny. We'll talk about that, as well as your work toward helping our veterans, in just a moment. Welcome back to Edwards Beyond the Test. Our guest today is Mr. DiCarie Williamson, who is a human factors engineer with the 773rd Test Squadron here at Edwards. Well, DiCarie, let's start this chapter with something that's very dear to your heart, which is helping our veterans. You volunteer with the Emerging Vets and Players MVP program as well as other outreach. Why does this mean so much to you?
Emerging Vets and Players means so much to me, and just veteran outreach means so much to me because MVP kind of came into my life at this very, not necessarily low point, but I definitely needed it. What MVP is, it's a nonprofit organization. It kind of centers itself on fitness and mental health. And I never understood really what mental health was or how to practice good mental health, I guess I should say. I had mentioned earlier that I went through this period where I had to make a decision where my military career was going to go at the time and, my civilian career. I guess MVP came into my life at a time where I needed to be able to get a lot of the things that were kind of holding me back out. I had to get it. I was compartmentalizing a lot of my emotions and things that were, holding me back, and MVP provided a space that allowed me to be vocal and, kind of purge all of the bad things that were really holding me back. And I see that in a lot of the veterans. A lot of veterans in my community, we target transition, and the transitional period from leaving the military, going back to, the civilian workforce, civilian society is difficult, specifically if you really don't know what is, coming around the corner, so to speak. I know I was very young. I was, 23 years old when I got out of the military, and, trying to find a place to stay, a job while I was waiting to get hired onto my primary job. It's really difficult, and a lot of people falter in that transitional period. So what we do with in MVP is we look at that and say, hey, this is a place where we can kind of organize and kind of share thoughts, experiences, and uplift each other in the times that are really low. That is what captured my heart, and it feels good doing it every day, being able to mix it up with different veterans and just kind of be some good in a world that's dark at times.
DiCarie, in case our listeners want to go and explore MVP on their own, can you give us the website for this nonprofit organization?
Yes, mergingvetsandplayers.org. You can go and check it out. My story is on there in the member stories section, but we have 5 chapters now. So I belong to the Los Angeles chapter. We have Las Vegas, Atlanta, Chicago, and we most recently opened up a chapter in New York City. So we have 5 chapters right now, and we are doing virtual sessions. It's our sessions period are we work out together for about 30 minutes just to kind of get the blood flowing, and then we sit together as a team, and we get in what we call the huddle, and we just kind of talk it out. So we've been doing that virtually now since the whole COVID-19 thing started. So mergingvetsandplayers.org, join one of our chapters, and you'll get a link for our session. So there's some criteria that you need to fit. It's for combat vets. Again, there's criteria.
So, DiCarie, you're very mindful of who you are and how you got to this point in your life. You know, in a recent conversation, you told me that tomorrow's not promised and that, as I stated a moment ago, you're in charge of your own destiny. What do you mean by all of that?
Yeah, so I really had to start really understanding living in the moment and doing the things that genuinely make you happy. For the longest time, I was just doing things because, I was told, and not that it's a bad thing, but hey, if you do this, is gonna, you'll make a lot of money doing this, or, all of these different things. But what I found out in trying all of these different things that were suggested, or, I found out I was just the most unhappy and most miserable person ever, right? And it wasn't until I started to kind of do the things that genuinely brought me joy, because there was a small time in my transition where I was just I'll go into IT. You can always find IT work, and only to find out I absolutely hate computers. There's absolutely nothing that I can do that will bring me currency, because I would hate to go to work and have to deal with this every day, right? So I said, well, what do I like? What is most important to me? And I found most of my joy on the flight line, turning wrenches, the smell of jet fuel and things going really, really fast. That is what brings me joy. And eventually, the universe, specifically the aerospace flight test universe, is what made space for me, right? And I'm sitting here as a human factors engineer, which I didn't even think that was even a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. The only reason I got into it in college was, one, I had some excellent instructors. They were test pilots, rest in peace, Mr. Hill. And I just thought it was just the most interesting thing. I had no idea that I had a future. So in some crazy way, the universe will make space where you belong. And, tomorrow's not promised. So if tomorrow is not promised, why would you spend any of your time doing something that's not making you happy, right? So, specifically in these times, this pandemic.
So, DiCarie, when it comes to helping others, especially mentoring a younger group, you once said you need to be the person you needed when you were 18 to 20 years old. And as you mentor people now, who do you hope hears your message?
Great question. 18 to 20 years old, I was a bit of a knucklehead, so I needed some guidance, and I needed somebody to, just kind of grab me by the shoulders and kind of tell me reality, give me some real stuff of substance. So I do that now, and it's 18, 20 years old. You're still trying to really find yourself, specifically if you're new to the military. So avoid the pitfalls, avoid, these types of attitudes and habits. And who I hope to hear this are the people like myself that had a hard time shedding the civilian mentality, right? Kind of the bad attitude, the questioning of authority, so to speak. I'm not saying, don't question authority. Just, do it in a way that it is professional and, you can grow and develop from it. I'm also talking to the people that are, the low-key plane nerds who, get into the military and think, get mixed up in the different groups. Oh, this is dumb, whatever. Take as many pictures while you're in service with the people around you right now. Like, to me, that's the most important. Really, really capture everything that you're doing. It's not corny, because in about 10, 15, 20 years from now, you're going to want to look back and you're going to want to, recall all of the fun times, something that I didn't do. But most importantly, I hope my children find this one day. I work every day to try and leave something so much bigger than myself, right? I want to leave a lasting legacy that my children could be proud of. Things live on the internet for years and years and years, and I hope when, they pull something up and they say, is this your dad? Oh, yeah, that is my dad, or that is my grandpa. Doing something so much bigger than yourself, to me, is one of those things that I want to give to my family, to my children. I want to do something to make them proud, and that's kind of it in a nutshell. Like, what we're doing here is really cool, or at least I think it's pretty cool, and I want to be able to share that with them.
DiCarie, it's been such an honor and pleasure to have this time to talk with you today and get to know you. And I tell you, from now on, every time I see an F-16 flying, I'm going to think of you and Human Factors Engineering. But before I let you go today, please share with us what it means to you to be here at Edwards Air Force Base and part of the center of the aerospace testing universe.
Wow. It is truly an honor. And we're making history. Like, we're making history out here every single day. And to be a part of that means so much more. I thought I needed to be somewhere else. And, faith kind of put me right here in the center of aerospace universe. It's funny because I sit here and I think about when I did show up here as a first-term airman, and, kind of the attitude I had, because, the recruiter sold me the dream, and I ended up in Southern California not doing all of the things that they told me in the recruiting pitch. But it's funny that 16 years from now, I'm still sitting here, and I'm sitting on this podcast telling you how truly amazing it has been. So I absolutely love what we're doing here. Again, we're making history, and I can't be more delighted on where, faith and opportunity has kind of landed me. So thank you again, Don. Thank you, 412 Test Wing. I really appreciate the 773rd Test Squadron, 416th, where skulls rule. I absolutely love what we're doing here.
Many thanks to today's guest, Mr. DiCarie Williamson, for taking time out to share his story and taking us beyond the test. We invite our listeners to submit their suggestions for future episodes by sending us an email at beyondtest@412tw.us. Thanks to all for joining us. I'm Dawn Waldman for Edwards Beyond the Test.